Rachel and the Magic Stone by Deborah Tyler. Rachel Green lived in the middle of a row of 3 cottages at the end of Orchard Lane. Her parents' house was a pretty little cottage, but the other 2 were very strange indeed. They were very ugly and very squat. They had lots of rickety black chimney pots, and they were covered with strange carvings. The carvings were of fierce beasts, and they seemed to roar at passers-by. So you can see that the cottages were very strange indeed, and the reason they were so odd is because they belonged to 2 witches. Rachel hated living there. It was no fun living between 2 old witches, especially 2 old witches who were always arguing. The 2 witches were sisters. Their names were Snatch and Grab, and they were very mean. Snatch was long and thin. She looked as if she was made out of sticks and joined together badly at the knees. She had a sharp nose, beady black eyes, and no chin. She always wore purple lipstick and a pair of big emerald earrings. Sometimes she wore an enormous hat with flowers sticking out of it. It was really rather a funny hat, but no one dared to laugh at it. Grab was as plain as her sister was colorful. Rachel always thought she looked as if she was made from a potato. She wore a gray jumper, a black skirt, and thick gray stockings, which always had huge holes in them. She had a fat, dimpled face and wild, wire gray hair. Long ago, the great white witch had given the 2 sisters a stone. It was a magic stone, made from unicorn's horn and dragon's wing, and it had very special powers. It could heal anything, and it could also be used to cast spells. In the summer, the magic stone shimmered a beautiful blue like the sea. In the winter, it glowed like pure gold. The 2 sisters refused to share it. Each one wanted the stone for herself, and they argued all the time about who should have it. When Rachel's parents moved in between the 2 witches, they found themselves in the middle of a great argument. Rachel was fed up with it. When the 2 witches were at their most angry, they made it rain. It had been raining now for 2 years. And that wasn't all. Snatch and Grub shouted at each other through magic telephones made of giant sheep horns. They made smelly potions to upset each other. But this usually upset Rachel's mom more, especially when she wanted to hang the washing out. Sometimes they threw bolts of lightning at each other, which missed and landed in Rachel's back garden. In fact, Snatch and Grub were so busy arguing that they had forgotten all about the stone. One day, in between rainstorms, Rachel's mom and dad were sitting in the back garden, and Rachel was playing in the front garden. Suddenly, she noticed something as bright as a pool of water lying by the gate. It was the magic stone, and it was lovely. It shimmered as deep and as blue as a lake, and as Rachel looked at it, it spoke. "They dropped me," said the stone grumpily. "Can you believe that, eh?" Rachel shook her head. The stone continued. "They argue about me for years and years. Then they drop me, and they don't even know that I'm gone. What a chick!" It shone a bright leaf green. "And think of all the trouble they have caused trying to get me, making bolts of fire, cooking up smells." The stone sighed. So did Rachel. "They are rude," she said. We should teach them a lesson." "I don't think I can," the stone said in a sad voice. "What they don't realize is that they've used up nearly all my magic with their greedy quarreling. I once belonged to a king of Egypt who wore me in his crown. Then I belonged to a mermaid who gave me to a brave and handsome pirate. I am a very special magic stone. To think about the way all my power is being wasted by two silly old witches would break my heart. If I had won, the trouble is, if I stopped them now, I would have no power left. All I would be is just a pretty stone." As the stone said this, there was a terrific boom in the back garden. Rachel looked round and was just in time to see a huge cloud of yellow smoke rising up behind the house. She also saw a pair of long legs disappear over the top of the hedge into Snatch's garden. Rachel dashed through the house. When she reached the back garden, she was horrified. On the two deck chairs where her mother and father had been sitting, there were two huge plants. Snatch had tried to turn Grab into a giant plant, but the spell had gone wrong. She had turned Rachel's parents into plants instead. Rachel ran back to the stone and explained what had happened. "You have to help me now," she cried. "All right," said the stone. "I don't know that I want to be magic anymore anyway. It was fun when I belonged to the king of Egypt, but being used by silly witches to turn sensible people's parents into plants is quite another matter." The stone began to glow. Then it flashed until orange sparks flew. Then the stone hummed. It recited the spell very grandly, and the whole back garden shook. "Keep no spells," declared the stone. "Let them be witches no more." There was a flash of light, a loud bang, and the stone turned blue again. Rachel could hear her parents chattering to one another in their deck chairs. She sighed with relief. But what of Snatch and Grab? Just as she was wondering what had become of them, Rachel saw the most remarkable thing. Grab came out of her house and walked towards Snatch, who had appeared at just the same time. "How nice to see you," said Grab. "How lovely to see you," replied Snatch. "Do come in and have some tea, my dear," said Grab, and they both walked back into the house. "I have your stone," Rachel called to them. "Stone? What stone?" they both asked. Rachel held up the stone, which was now a dull blue. "Oh, that!" said the sisters together. "Keep it!" So Rachel kept the stone. It was no longer magic. It was no longer anything but a pretty stone. Snatch and Grab were no longer bad witches. Their argument was over, and it never rained on Rachel's house again. When Rachel was older, she had the stone made into a brooch and always wore it on special occasions. It shone a beautiful blue in summer and a rich gold in winter. And Rachel liked it better than all her other jewels, for it reminded her of how stupid arguments can be. And after all, who else has a brooch made of unicorn's horn and dragon's wing? Or, for that matter, one that once belonged to a pirate, an Egyptian king, and two silly witches.